back in its usual slot, the dead of winter. We go to Davos in Switzerland after the COVID pandemic. France 24's Kate Moody is there. How's it looking?
Well, Francois, Davos is always full of contradictions. The elite usually gather here to talk about injustice and inequality. The focus on sustainability is sometimes a little bit blurred by the constant arrival of private jets and helicopters. And that is truer than ever this year. The theme is cooperation in a fragmented world. And the spirit of globalization that Davos has always represented is really under attack as we kick off 2023. The global political balance is shifting. There's a war on Europe's borders, and cooperation in many places in the world has given way to protectionism. Now, among the highlights for the first couple of days here, Ukraine's First Lady Olena Zelenska is due to give the opening remarks to the World Economic Forum on Tuesday morning. She'll be here in person. Her husband, President Zelensky, is also due to address the gathering, but that'll be remotely on Wednesday, as we understand it. Other senior Ukrainian officials will be speaking on panels throughout the week. Also on Tuesday, we'll be hearing from the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, as well as China's Vice Premier. That is the highest level delegation from Beijing to be in Davos in several years, and it's the first foreign trip for a high-level government official since China lifted those COVID travel restrictions. In some ways, as you say, things are a little bit back to normal here. As you say, we're back in the dead of winter, the first cold, snowy meeting since the start of the pandemic. Last year's meeting was held in May, so a very different landscape. But in other ways, it's very clear that the world is changing and Davos is struggling to keep up with it.
The world is changing and inequality is accelerating. I guess you could call it, Kate, a Davos tradition now. Opening day means that the charity Oxfam releases its report on inequality.
Yeah, as I said earlier, there is this focus on inequality, even as some of the richest people in the world and most powerful people in the world gather here. That latest report from Oxfam says that over the last 2 years, the top 1% of the global population has taken in nearly 2/3 of new wealth. Before the pandemic, it was more like they were getting about half the wealth. The most vulnerable people in the world are getting poorer. We've heard other reports about the unprecedented backslide in that fight against extreme poverty around the world. Energy and food companies are reporting record profits at a time when many households are struggling to make ends meet. And Oxfam is repeating its conviction that taxation is the best way forward, both for the ultra-rich and for big corporations. I've been speaking about this report with Oxfam's executive director, Gabriela Bucher.
And also shameful. And it means that inequality and the difference is accumulating and it's accelerating. In the last 10 years, it was half and half, 1% and 99, which was already extreme. But now it's almost double. The 1% has almost double new wealth of the 99%.
You've also looked at corporate profits, which have hit record highs over the last couple of years for food and energy companies in particular. Is there any hope that last year's agreement on a 15% minimum corporate tax rate might have an impact on that?
So the 15% is not going to have an impact on excess profits. So 15% is in fact also much lower than the global average, which is around 25%. That's what the corporate rate is. So what we're talking about now is excess profits more than 10% over the average of the previous years. And that means that it requires special measures. And some countries, regions have introduced them, but not all. And it's been introduced for some sectors, mostly oil and gas, but not for the food companies that have also been making excess profits. And in the report, we show how 95 companies doubled their profits during this time of crisis. And most of that excess income went to shareholders, around more than 80%.
Are there any specific markets or regions where this is particularly egregious, or is it really a global phenomenon?
It is a global phenomenon, but some countries are making the decision to take measures that rein in this excessive inequality. And so some countries have wealth taxation in place, and we know many are discussing it. So what we're saying here, this is an opportunity. There is hope in the middle of all the problems that we currently have. 1 in 10 people in the world are facing hunger every day. the inflation, the cost of living crisis, there is money available. It's just not being tapped. So there's opportunity. The tax system has been shifting over the last 30 to 40 years from those who have more to the average person, to the worker, to the person paying their goods and services. And we show in the report how that has happened. There is an opportunity to rebalance, and each country, each region needs to think how it works for them. And we know it has particular effects in some middle-income countries. In Nigeria, for example, we think if more is raised from the wealthy, there will be much more money to be spent on health and education. But that's the case worldwide.
So that was Gabriela Bucher speaking to me earlier here in Davos. I did ask her whether she was worried that these repeated yearly warnings here at this elite gathering were falling on deaf ears. She said there is no better place to pass along this message because this is where the decision makers, the power brokers, really gather to talk.
Kate Moody at the outset of what promises to be a very busy week indeed. Many thanks for that update from Davos.